You wake up when your body is ready. No alarm. No phone. No meeting at 9. You open your eyes and the sky outside the cave mouth is just beginning to turn orange. Your body is warm from the bodies sleeping beside you. You don't think about what you're going to do today. You already know. For roughly 300,000 years, this was the morning. Every morning. Not as a fantasy, not as a wellness retreat, but as the only reality your ancestors had ever known. We assume that ancient humans spent every waking hour desperately trying not to die. Running from predators, scraping the earth for calories, surviving barely in an endless miserable grind. That assumption is almost entirely wrong. In 1966, anthropologist Marshall Solins stood up at a conference in Chicago and said something that stunned the room. He called hunter-gatherers the original affluent society, not because they were rich, but because they were working, on average, between 3 and 5 hours a day to meet all their needs. Everything else was time, free time, leisure time, time to do whatever they wanted. That claim has been tested and retested ever since, and the evidence keeps confirming it. Anthropologist Richard Lee spent years living among the Kung San people of the Kalahari Desert, one of the most studied forager populations in the world. He tracked their activities obsessively. He timed their hunts. He weighed their food. What he found was that adults worked roughly 2.5 days a week to feed themselves and their families. The rest of their time was spent resting, socializing, playing, dancing, and doing what we would call absolutely nothing. Archaeologist James Sussman, who also spent decades with the Kalahari Kung, described their approach to time as a complete inversion of ours. They did not hoard. They did not plan beyond the next few days. They lived in what he called an economy of immediacy. If there was food, you ate. If there wasn't, you found some. The anxiety we feel about the future, the constant checking of accounts and schedules and deadlines, was not part of their psychology. So what did a day actually look like? Let's reconstruct it. Let's say you are a young adult living somewhere in what is now East Africa, approximately 100,000 years ago. Your group is small, maybe 25 to 35 people. You know every single one of them. You wake up without an alarm because your body runs on sunlight. You sleep when it's dark. You rise when it's light. Your sleep has not been a single block of 8 hours. Research by historian Roger Ekirch suggests that the modern concept of a single long sleep is historically unusual. Your sleep is probably 2 periods with a quiet interval in the middle. During that interval, people in your group talk softly, tend to the fire, sometimes visit other shelters. Then sleep again. By mid-morning, you might join a small group heading out to gather berries, tubers, nuts, seeds. The women in your group, based on archaeological and cross-cultural evidence, provide the majority of the calories your group eats. Not through dramatic hunts, but through steady, reliable gathering that rarely fails. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner, who studied the Kung for decades, found that plant foods gathered by women accounted for roughly 60 to 80% of the diet in many forager groups. You know every plant within a day's walk. You know which roots swell after rain. You know which tree flowers before the fruit comes. This is not casual knowledge. It is a library of expertise built over a lifetime, passed down in stories and songs and direct demonstration since childhood. Your mind is not less complex than a modern mind. It is differently loaded. The hunt, when it happens, is not every day. It might happen 2 or 3 times a week or less. And it is not a solitary, desperate scramble. It is coordinated, intelligent, and social. Groups of men, sometimes mixed groups, track animals over hours or even days. A practice called persistence hunting, documented at Blombo's cave and studied in living populations across the Kalahari, involves running prey animals until they overheat. You don't need to be faster than the animal. You just need to outlast it. Your upright body, your ability to sweat, your long legs built for endurance, all of it evolved for exactly this. A successful hunt is not a private accomplishment. The meat is shared, not out of generosity exactly, but out of something more structural. Your group runs on reciprocity. Today you share your kill. Tomorrow someone shares theirs with you. To hoard meat would be socially destructive. It would mark you as someone who could not be trusted. And in a world where trust is your only safety net, that is a catastrophic reputation to have. By midday, the heat is high and the light is harsh. You rest. This is not laziness. This is intelligence. You conserve energy during the hottest hours. You sleep. You sit in shade with people you love. You talk. The talking, it turns out, is not trivial. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar's research on social bonding suggests that language itself may have evolved partly as a form of social grooming, a way to maintain relationships across a group too large for physical touch alone. You gossip. You tell stories. You laugh. Studies of living forager groups show that the majority of conversation time is spent on social topics. Relationships, personalities, who did what, who said what, who can be trusted. The same conversations you have in offices and kitchens today, stripped of their modern props. Afternoons might bring craft work. Not in a factory sense. In a slow, meditative sense. You flake stone into tools, a process that takes genuine skill and leaves you in a focused state researchers sometimes compare to meditation. You weave. You make ochre pigment, ground from red iron-rich rock. Ochre marks found at Blombo's cave in South Africa date back at least 100,000 years, suggesting your ancestors were making art, applying color, decorating their bodies, long before any of the civilizations we usually credit with culture. Your children are not in school. They are not in structured programs. They are playing. Constantly. With each other, with adults, with whatever they can find. Research by developmental psychologist Peter Gray on children in hunter-gatherer societies shows that play is the primary mechanism through which ancient children learned everything they needed to know. Tracking, plant identification, social rules, conflict resolution. They learned it all through unstructured play in mixed age groups, watched loosely by nearby adults. As the sun lowers, the fire comes. The fire is not just warmth and cooking. The fire is the center of social life. Polly Wiesner analyzed decades of recorded conversations among the Kung and found something striking. Daytime conversations were mostly practical, problem-solving, planning, information sharing. But once the fire was lit and the sun went down, something shifted. Evening conversations were dominated by stories, healing ceremonies, singing, laughter, ritual. The fireside, she concluded, was where culture happened, where identity was reinforced, where the group became a group. You were not an individual moving through a world of strangers, managing your image on a screen, comparing your life to lives you'd never actually touch. You were embedded, known. You were someone whose absence would be noticed immediately, whose presence made the group safer, whose name was spoken with specific and particular meaning. Here is the counterintuitive twist. When agriculture arrived, roughly 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, it was not an upgrade. Skeletal evidence analyzed from dozens of sites shows that the transition to farming brought shorter stature, worse dental health, more nutritional deficiencies, and increased infectious disease. Populations became denser and disease spread faster. Work hours, by every measure we have, went up dramatically. The argument that farming freed humans from toil is, archaeologically speaking, backwards. Farming was harder, more monotonous, more hierarchical. The free time shrank. The inequality grew. So why did it spread? That is a question anthropologists are still wrestling with. But here is what you carry from all of this. When you feel the pull to rest in the afternoon and your body fights the fluorescent light, that is not weakness. When you crave conversation more than content, that is not distraction. When you want to sit around a fire with people you love and tell stories until late into the night, that is not nostalgia. That is your brain running the same software it has always run. The same software that got your ancestors through 300,000 years without a single alarm clock. You wake up when your body is ready. For most of human history, that was not a privilege. It was just Tuesday.